seed program, which we manage. And then it also involves the contracting of grain production with growers. And then I have a team that manages the logistics of bringing that production from the farms through seed cleaning facilities and then onto our facilities. So, once it reaches our plants, then I turn it over to the operations guys, the plant managers, and everybody else down the supply chain, and they turn that production into food and distribute from there and sell and market mostly through North America, but also places globally. So, but yeah, my role is farm facing, and that's where we operate. Manny, I've got a couple of slides here just to help guide some discussions. Would that be fine to share the screen?
Definitely.
I'll take that as a yes. Okay, thanks, Vanessa. So I'll do a quick share here. Okay. Just a couple things. And Vanessa, you sent the outline to the group here. First of all, let's keep this casual. It's a roundtable. Let's keep it that way. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of formal things. I've got a few slides that I put together just to generate some discussion, but let's keep it open as a roundtable as it's designed to be. So this was distributed by AHA prior to this meeting. So we'll try to touch on each of these topics here. What I've got here is a photo of our St. Agathe facility. So St. Agathe is just 15 minutes south of Winnipeg. We do have the old Manitoba Harvest facility, which is in Winnipeg. Combined, we're about 50 million pounds of hemp grain production. And to give you an idea of the products that we produce, you've probably seen the Manitoba Harvest names on the shelf, but we do branded production. Hemp Oil Canada, Manitoba and Harvest and Hemp Oil Canada merged back in 2016. Hemp Oil Canada focused on bulk food ingredients, where Manitoba Harvest focused on branded production. We're still continuing to add branded labels to the family of products that you see here. Food Expo West was just a couple of weeks ago. That was down in California, one of the bigger North American food shows. And we introduced new lines of products. There's a ground hemp seed product that we introduced, similar to a ground flax product, so kind of competing in that market. We've partnered up with a couple of other superfoods. So there's a hemp, chia, and flax blend that we've made, and that's more of a smoothie or baking mix. And we're looking at introducing some other product lines to that end. We're owned by Tilray, which is a global cannabis company, and we're the wellness division of Tilray as we're positioned. So it's foods, beverages. There are some CBD products that will be entered onto the market here in fairly short order, but it's more the hemp side of what we do, and that includes food products, and it's going to lead into some CBD products as well, under a different name. It's not the Manitoba Harvest name to start with, but we'll be doing some of that through our sales and marketing. As far as my farm operation side of it goes, we're not doing anything with CBD or collecting the flower or anything like that. It's strictly grain production, so selling pedigreed seed and bringing that grain production back to our facilities. But this gives you a line of the products that we have. So it's hemp hearts, the proteins, the oil. We do sell a gel cap hemp seed oil for the omega-3s, kind of your daily intake of your omegas. We have bars, beverages, as well as granola, and then some additional products that we're introducing here just this year. I wanted to touch on some of the things that are affecting what we're doing on food and how that might translate to what happens with our food markets. And I've got a 5-year canola trend here, and I know a number of the people that I saw signed up. Some of the names are unfamiliar to me, but I'm assuming you're well entrenched into agriculture and you know what's happening on commodities in general. And there's so many things going on around the world that we're keeping an eye on that's having an impact on what we do on hemp food. Now, here's a 5-year canola trend, and I copied this just at the end of last week. So we're up over $1,100. A couple of years ago we were less than half of that. So this spike in commodity pricing, and I've got a 5-year trend for wheat as well. Very similar pattern. This is having an impact on what we do with hemp, and from the farmers out there, they look at their return per acre. And yes, they want to have certain crops in the rotation all the time. Hemp fits into an oilseed part of the rotation. So, quite often we're compared with, well, how does hemp do against canola? And quite often we'll look at the pricing of canola and price off of that. It's almost got to the point where canola has gotten out of reach as far as being able to keep up on hemp grain production and that return per acre. So what we're really relying on is that growers see hemp as a part of their rotation. It's a diversified addition to their rotation, and it's one that they're committed to staying into long term. But I have to admit, we've seen some growers that opted not to grow hemp this year because the canola is just too lucrative. It's too attractive to walk away from. And when you're talking, being able to book in your 22 production for over $20 a bushel, that's pretty tough to compete with on the hemp side. So bottom line here is that we want to have long-term partnerships with our growers, but the way prices have escalated, it is difficult to keep up on that return per acre. Hemp has some special characteristics that you need to manage, and it's the dry down, it's maintaining food quality grade. There's a little extra work involved, and when you add that all up, we're at a point now where it's really tough to compete against canola. So we're relying on growers that want to see hemp as a long-term part of their rotation, and they're continuing on despite some of the ups and downs, mostly ups in the commodity markets. So it's challenging this year, to say the least. But I think we do have growers that are committed to this crop in a long-term sense, and know that high prices fix high prices, and we'll be back down into some sort of normal semblance of commodity pricing at some point, and hemp will continue to be there as a good alternative. So to react to this, we're in some pricing that we have never seen before as far as hemp, just to keep up. And it's still a very good, lucrative crop option for growers that want to grow hemp. So any questions on that? I want to make sure we stay true to the roundtable part of this.
Maybe just elaborate on that pricing, if you could, Clarence. Have we got any conventional and organic prices that you've posted this year yet?
Yeah, I think it's fairly generally known amongst growers, and for conventional, we're at 96 cents a pound. And just to give you an idea, a couple of years ago we were at 55. So we've almost doubled over the last couple of years. Organic, we're just a shade over $2 a pound, and again, that's record territory. We've been at $1.35 a couple 3 years ago, $1.40, 48, $1.50 over the last couple of years, and now we're just over $2. So we're trying to follow this price trend as much as we can to stay competitive, and it's reflective in what we're doing on our contract prices this year. Any additional questions on that? Okay.
Maybe just I'll add to that, Clarence, is that the prices you showed there is kind of a spot price, but yep, those high prices are trending into 2022 and 2023. So we're looking at long-term trends here as well. That it's not a flash in the pan. It's going to be over next year. I mean, it's a challenge for a few years, I think. Eh?
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. These are cash prices, and we do look at the forward prices and where we need to be for new crop. It looked like we were being in a pretty good spot as far as competitive returns per acre up until the whole Ukraine thing hit. And when you've got two countries that are in the state that they're in, and that's like 25, if not more percent of the global wheat trade, well, that certainly has an impact on commodities. So our grain prices reacted accordingly, and we're seeing that. We're holding the line on our contract prices right now. I still think it's a very fair price, and again, the benefits of being in a position where you've got an expanded rotation, working direct with the food company, so the grower's closer to the market. That has some certain advantages, and we get growers that say all the time they have a sense of pride on being part of that brand that's on the shelf. So that's some of the benefits of continuing to contract in hemp and being tied to a branded food production facility.
Clarence, I got just one comment. Jeff Koscheck here. With the increase in prices, and we've seen this in the past, where additional countries perhaps start to, with the increase again, switch their focus or pivot maybe from more fiber production to grain production. What's in your mind, I guess, the risk of additional countries maybe perhaps coming in and taking advantage of the higher grain prices that are, really North American based at this point, I guess. Just wouldn't mind your comment on that.
We've been a good question, Jeff, and we've been keeping in touch on what's happening with international trade of hemp, and it is relatively small. The hemp food market is primarily North America. It was started essentially here in Canada back in '98. Whereas all other countries were essentially fiber production. Canada went in a different direction and established the food industry. So Jeff, you're absolutely right. The food prices are generally established right here. Other countries are getting into food. We are watching European production. There is some European production getting into North America on the food side of things, primarily Eastern Europe. And not so much in Canada. There's not a whole lot of imports coming into Canada yet. I'll qualify with that. The US is bringing in some Eastern European product. Still relatively small, but it is migrating this way. If you take a look at where hemp grain prices are trading at in Europe, you probably can bring them in for slightly less than what we have here, despite the container freight shipping costs and all that. As a company, that's not a direction that we're going at. We do want to continue to work with our Canadian and North American growers and still build up the industry here. And when you're dealing with import permits and things like that, there's a ton of administration to bring hemp seed into the country here, and you don't always get a good handle on what the quality is. By the time it's here and it's arrived at your door and you open up that container, it's too late to have a good handle on the quality. So we're going to stay committed to our North American markets. The US doesn't, or sorry, the EU doesn't sound like they have a whole big supply of surplus grain available. And from what it sounds like, it's the organic that's coming to North America. Conventional, I don't see or hear of that coming into this continent here quite yet. And then in the US, and I'll show some USDA numbers, still for the most part, they're focused on the flour. Their annual production dropped significantly over the last couple of years, just with the collapse of the CBD pricing. But they're still focused largely on the flour, just only getting started on the grain side of things in the US. So for the most part, grain is a Canadian phenomenon, and hemp for food is Canadian or North American. So long answer to your question, Jeff. Did I cover enough bullet points there for you?
Yeah, I guess there's always as we've seen in the past, as our contract prices move up and the opportunity exists for additional countries that may or may not be able to provide the grain at less cost than what Canada can produce at. So that's just my concern. But I agree with what both you and Russ have said thus far. I think we're in it probably for a couple of years here, with commodity prices elsewhere. So anyway, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't see commodity prices coming down anytime soon. Long-term fundamentals just don't show that. So I think we're going to be at some pretty high hemp food prices here for a little bit too.
This is Rigel at Olive. I can reinforce some of what Clarence said. I work with an Eastern European company. Olive Super Nutrition used to be Hempco, and it used to be Barella AgroPro. So they're both, it's a daughter company from Aurora Cannabis, which is in competition with Tilray, having a lot of trouble, got out of the hemp industry and kind of spawned these companies in those markets. We are exporting conventional hemp seed, hulled hemp seeds to Europe. So we're still definitely competitive, or have been competitive in the past at pricing that we've had. And as Clarence was saying, there's also quite a big difference in the way that the farm operations are managed in Europe. The way that the yields are calculated, the way that the seed cleaning occurs, biggest difference is that essentially the seed off of the field, cleaned weight, regardless of the size of the seed, is the weight, right? So if you've got greens, if you've got undersized, all of that is included. So if you look kind of prima facie at the pricing in Europe, it looks really, really good. But then you end up doing a huge clean out on that seed to get to something that's actually usable. And the prices are not that significantly different than here. Of course, if we're comparing Europe and Canada at any given time, you can have spikes at any given time in spot prices that may make one market look more attractive, or dips in one market that make it look more attractive because of, we've been having droughts in North America, as we all know. Prices are sort of spiking. There's also strange agreements, I think, with China and whatever for export of other materials, agricultural products that are driving up our acre price. So, at any given time, it could be that there's an advantage in one market or the other, but then you have transport costs that push against you, and those spiked at the same time. We were up to 45 cents a pound, I think, for ocean freight, and from China to China even higher. So that's really insulating our high prices in North America. Thanks.
Good comments, Rigel. And probably the bottom line of all that discussion is that, hemp for food, although it's primarily a Canadian established product, it's going to be subject to international trends and all the uncertainties that are going on globally right now. Good comments, appreciate that. I'm going to touch a little bit on differentiating certified organic versus conventional. Now, when we talk hemp food, the consumer is generally what we refer to as a holistic health seeker. So somebody who's looking for healthy food options, hemp is marketed or positioned as one of those super seeds. It's got the omegas, it's got your plant-based proteins, and people who tend to gravitate to that sort of food choice, they're also looking pretty strongly at how that product is produced. And organic fills into that equation pretty strongly. So, we do differentiate pretty strongly on what's an organic offer to the consumer, as well as conventional, or in the food world, it's called a natural product. As far as certified organic, I think we're hitting a plateau, and I'll just relate what we're doing as a company, or what we have done. When I started, and I've been with the organization for 8 years now, we were about, I would say, 15 to maybe 20% organic. That has changed to the point where it's now more than half of our total production is organic. And I'm thinking we're getting into a plateau of being able to find enough to fit that demand. There's always been more demand for organic, and in my last 8 years, I've been challenged to try meet that demand, and we're getting to the point where I don't know if there's enough organic production out there for us to be able to do that. We've always had customers on allocation. A little over a year ago, we had one of our customers, you might have heard them, called Costco, switch from a Manitoba Harvest natural or conventional product, and went to an all North American organic offering under the Kirkland Signature brand. that was a big switch in what we did, and that's what switched us over from being less than half to well more than half of our total production being certified organic. But when something that big happens, it's tough to keep up. So that's why I'm saying we might be at a point here where we just may not be able to meet that overall demand for organic, and customers on allocation, things like that. I guess the message is if you are producing organically, there's more than enough demand to meet that supply. Now, on the conventional side of things, the markets are still strong for conventional. If you take a look at where food prices are going, where commodity prices are going, I'm only speculating, so this is my opinion only, and our marketers may have different thoughts on that. But if organic gets to the point where it's it's too expensive to include in your shopping cart, and you're looking at milk prices, and am I going to be able to fill my gas tank, and can I fill my grocery cart at the same time? I'm thinking consumers may be checking their prices pretty closely to see what they can get for the dollar that they have. And I'm not wondering if we're not going to see limits on organic demand as well. Not to say that that the demand is going to fall out the bottom. I don't think that'll happen at all. If growers are growing organically, we'll certainly have a market for it. But I'm thinking as a result, there may be some additional boost in conventional production, just because of that trade-off on pricing and what it does on the shelf to consumers. I don't know if anybody else has any additional comments to that, but I'll certainly take some discussion on that idea. No takers? Okay, we'll move on to the next one. So in that light, need for innovation, and consumers want to know, not only what's in the package and what they're buying, but they also want to know how it's produced and where does that product come from, and is there a story behind that? And I'll touch on that in a minute. But in order for hemp to keep up, we need to innovate and do more as an industry with what we have. So far, for the most part, and it's changing now. So I don't want to be stuck in the past here. But the seeds in the bag, that's one thing. And there's a certain segment of the market that will want to buy hemp hearts or hemp protein or oil. I think there's tremendous opportunity for ingredients and where those can go in the food world. Plant-based proteins, and our company is doing some work with Protein Industries Canada to look at meat alternates and to see what we can do with extrusions with hemp protein blends. Food ingredient applications, and I showed you some examples of what we're doing on the bars and on the granola, and we got some new products coming out with ingredient blends that includes chia and flax and others. And I really do think that this is an area where hemp can really expand on the food side of things. The seeds in the bag, we've been at this for a little over 20 years now, and our Canadian market share per consumer is maybe 5%, maybe just above that, and it's less in the US. We're maybe getting on 2 or just over 2% of the US market that has the hemp hearts in their pantry somewhere. But how many consumers don't have granola in the house, or bars, or other convenience foods? So I think the need to innovate and bring more food products to the market is going to be a big thing for our food industry, and making sure we can continue to grow on that. I'll get back to the first point that I have here on seed genetics. Now, in order to keep up with what's going on in the agricultural world, if you take a look at the long-term trends on wheat yields or canola yields, or any crop yield for that matter, you take corn and soybeans, there's a steady ongoing increase in production. And I think it's somewhere, and Jeff, you might be a little more in tune on this, but I think it's close to 2% per year where we're seeing boosts in production on crops in general. We need to do that with our seed production here as well, and try get better yields, and whether it's better varieties. And Jeff, you're in the seed business solely, and I think you'll agree when we say we got to be more competitive with hemp. We can do it on price for sure. Growers look at returns per acre, but there's got to be something in it in terms of yield and what comes off that field as well. I don't know if you got additional comments on that.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Clarence. Absolutely. I think we've, as you mentioned, we've been in the business 20 years now, and probably a good 10 to 15 years on the breeding side of things. And initially, our objective as a seed company was to not burn our combines, our farmers' combines down. And so we took a lot of those tall European varieties and just got those seed heads closer to the ground. And often, hemp is kind of related to canola. I don't know if we'll ever hit canola acres, but with regards to as canola was introduced, we're very much in the same boat as far as our yield per acre. And I think that's one of the first things as a seed company we're looking at is increasing that yield per acre. And then distinctive characteristics within each varietal, perhaps that might move towards different aspects of the industry, whether it's maybe a sweeter seed for hemp milk production or something. So that's where I agree with you, Clarence, and I think that's well underway now, and we're from our perspective or my perspective, we hope to have some of those new varieties as such within the next year or 2 years.
Yeah, I'll give the group some insight on what we look at as a company on genetics that make up the supply chain that we do. Number one, it's got to be good agronomically. So it's got to be harvestable. Let's not burn down the combines. Let's get good yields. And what we look at for harvestability is, relatively short in stature. And this is grain only, and the advent of fiber may change things a little bit here, but for a grain variety, we're looking at something that's relatively short in stature, yields well. We're looking for a monopodial, just one stem. More branches just means more tying up in the combine, and we don't want to burn our growers' machines down. And it's got to yield well. So that's the agronomic side. The second pillar that we look at is how well does it process in our facility. And there's variations between one variety to the next on how well they process, and it may be something as subtle as the amount of shell versus the heart inside. How easy is it to knock off the shell, and what sort of yields can we get? So we're looking at processability, and how much heart or how much oil can we get from every ton that moves into our facilities. So that's number two. The third one is, and Jeff, you touched on it, are there any sort of consumer aspect? So is it the protein content or taste? Is it a sweeter tasting? Is it a larger heart that might have certain applications somewhere? So those are things that we want to see as well. Oil profiles, protein profiles, things like that. Those are all considerations from our food innovation side, and those all have links back to the genetics. So between agronomy and our own processing efficiencies, as well as consumer characteristics, those are the three pillars that make up what we bring into our facilities and what alters our decisions on that. Managing supply, and I guess when we're talking about supply chains and wanting to compete with the big commodities, and I really do believe that hemp, although it's a very small specialty crop right now and has remained so, despite the fact on its ups and downs and how much it's grown since day one, it's still very much a specialty crop. We need to manage it as a larger crop and maybe de-risk it in some ways for our growers and make it a little more prominent out there. So we're managing on pricing, and how do we provide that pricing to growers? When we're compared to a mainline commodity where the grower can take it to an elevator and have a choice of 3-4 different outlets where they can sell their product and go home with a check that day, we're still kind of stuck as an industry of well, we'll pay you in 30 days after it arrives to our facility, and we know that the quality is there. So we're trying to do some things that are different on pricing and kind of de-risk the cash flow part of it to growers. Managing supply, we've been up and down, and I'll be the first to put my hand up on a company that maybe had a few really good years where sales have been really strong, and we look in the rearview mirror and go, wow, we need to increase our production by 25% this next year, because look what we did over those last 2 years. We need to be a little more in tune with the market, and some of the things that we're doing is working a little more forward down the supply chain and talking with our buyers, looking at what they want, and trying to tailor, and whether it's private label, whether it's branded product, and trying to get those long-term forecasts for the product that we sell. Hemp being as small as it is compared to the acreage that we have in Western Canada, it's tough to manage that supply. And if you're, let's say 10,000 acres overproduced, it takes a while to chew through that. Another hat that I wear is with the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance, and we're trying to do a number of things that expands on that, on the marketing outlets. So whether it's animal food or animal feed in addition to food, birdseed market has been kind of the fallback for anything that doesn't make food grade, but we're trying to expand on what we're doing with hemp seed. It's an excellent nutrition source for livestock. We're just about to hit send on the application for that. But treating this commodity like it was bigger, so managing in a bigger world, I think that's one of the keys to get it to be a bigger commodity. So having a feed outlet, being more creative on what we can do with food, being more creative on what we can do with specifications for food. I've got a point up here on supply chain waste, and when you look at 15 to 20% is cleaned out and it's got nowhere to go, we need to do something with that as well. And we're looking at doing some innovative things on how do we minimize that waste at the seed cleaning facility? What can we do at our facilities that's maybe more flexible than what we have been in the past? So trying to be more innovative and manage that waste and being more efficient in what we do. So that's it leads to minimizing grower waste, making it more attractive for growers to produce hemp, and try to operate on a bigger vision, let's put it that way, so that we can de-risk this crop for growers and make it more attractive to keep that as an ongoing part of our supply chain. Any comments or questions on that?
I'm curious if anybody else had any learning outcomes from the extra production we had in 2017 and 2018, and the kind of shelf life we've seen of the whole seeds kept in storage. I know for us, we've used 2017 seed even in 2022 and found that the product quality is excellent. And I'm not sure, if that was something that the industry knew looking backwards, that you could keep seed for 5 years and still have good quality on your products. But I'm curious to hear if anybody else has any thoughts on how that might affect their part of the industry or the industry overall.
Rigel, yeah, associated with HPS also, and we were similar to others where we're in the situation. And I think what we've learned on how to handle the seed over the last few years has definitely helped for that. Nobody, obviously, in this industry wants any farmer to hold on to seed for that long. And I hope we never have to again, to be quite honest. But I think that's the key is making sure that the education is there as far as handling seed. If you're a new grower or inexperienced on that side, to make sure that quality stays. And essentially it's making sure that the seed is handled in a gentle manner. So, the adaptation of conveyors and drying techniques and along with, I think what we've worked with PAMI in the past through the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance on the proper, CFUs to run through the grain to make sure that we dry it down as quickly as possible and maintain quality. But Yeah, good point. But yeah, let's just let's just darn well hope we don't need to be in that situation. I'm sure everybody feels the same.
That's another thing to mention, actually, is that another difference between us and Europe is processors are expected to purchase their seed contracts fairly promptly. So where we might see lower prices there, they're also having to carry the carrying costs of the values of those seeds as well as storage costs. So that's, I mean, I think, it's pretty typical in Canada for us to pay a storage, whether that be to raise the price of the seed on delivery, if it's delayed delivery, or to buy it and then pay for storage at that location. But, if seed prices crash after a contract is made and storage prices are supposed to be included, that puts a lot of downward pressure on that farmer to accept a lower price that they may not have had to have accepted if they were able to sell their seed promptly. So it is a pretty big difference of shift of risk to the grower in the Canadian market.
Yeah, and that's, good comments, good discussion, guys. And that's where the concept of trying to de-risk this for the grower, that's something that we all need to work towards. And managing our supply volumes, having those storage premiums, but consuming that product in a decent timeline. In an ideal world, we would contract in a given year, and that production will be gone by October, November, just as new crop is starting to work into the system. And in every crop commodity there is some carryover every year, but as a specialty crop, we're a little bit subject to some of the variability in supply and demand. And being able to read that better is, I think it's incumbent upon all of us, and having our system set up to minimize that risk, and just make sure that we're able to consume that in a timely fashion. So I think as the industry gets bigger, it'll be those hills and valleys will be a little bit easier to manage. And but in the meantime, we're looking at implementing a few things that would help de-risk that and make it easier for the growers.
I'd just like to add to that, Clarence, that I think that's a really fascinating, sharing that you did there, Rigel, because we've often wondered, we don't have that much experience in year to year tracking of inventory and quality maintenance and that sort of thing. And the fact that it's an oilseed crop makes it much more vulnerable to deterioration. So, the one unique difference is that hull and the size of it, and the integrity of it. Does obviously protect the seed a bit more. And you're right, Clarence, nobody grows hemp to store it for 5 years, but
yep.
It's certainly an interesting characteristic that talks to the strength and integrity of the seed itself. So that's super encouraging to hear that. Not something we want to brag about too much, but nevertheless, it's a unique distinction. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, another thing that really helps, and I've been on customer meetings where I said we have a real advantage in Canada and that it gets cold, and they kind of look at me with a raised eyebrow. But with the PAMI research that CHC has done, Jeff, as you alluded to, you can cool that seed off in the wintertime. Basically, put it in the fridge, and you help to preserve the integrity of that product. And the shell absolutely keeps the integrity of those sensitive oils longer term. As soon as you open it up, then you start to see oxidation take place. But we've learned that we can store it for a while. Not that we want to, but it can be done. And I think as an industry and as a farm community, we've done a lot of learning over the last number of years. So I think we have a pretty good advantage in knowing how to store this crop.
I agree, Clarence. The turning on your aeration for the winter months when it's minus 30 is one of the keys to keeping it long term. The other thing is the thing that matters more than anything in terms of how well a seed is going to keep is what happens in the first month of its care. Was it dried at too high a heat? Because if it turned brown in the first month, it's not going to stop being brown 4 years down the road. Those seeds are rancid and they're only suitable for feed within a month. Now, if the grower refuses to accept that, they're going to hold on to that seed, and you go around looking for seed, and the only things you find are the seeds that were rejected 4 years ago or 3 years ago. And it gives you the idea the seed never kept, but in actuality, the only thing that kept was the stubbornness of the grower to not accept that their seed had been damaged and ruined and to release it. But if the seed was good in the first place and kept under, strange circumstance that might create that situation, that's when you can see those results.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And yeah, the early handling of that crop is definitely a factor in how long it keeps. And if you're harvesting very aggressively, where you're opening up the shell or causing it to crack, dehulling is our job. It doesn't necessarily have to be done at the farm, shouldn't be done at the farm, but using conveyors and gentle handling, that's something that we've all learned as an industry over the years. And I think the growers that have been producing hemp for food over the long term, they understand this. And there's some pretty good skills as far as being able to handle the crop on farm. And I think collectively as an industry we know that. And from our company standpoint, we've got agronomists that can share that information and act as those coaches for new growers, again, to help de-risk that crop and make it easier to get up the learning curve. I'm going to touch on the fiber opportunity. So a month ago, Aaron Barr from Canadian Rockies Hemp was talking about fiber. Now, in their business model, it's fiber only. So they're harvesting it like a forage and getting those much taller varieties, harvesting before seed set. There is an opportunity for a dual type market, and that's fairly new. The fiber markets are opening up, and it sounds like there's some pretty good demand. And there are some new startups in the industry that are looking at fiber, and they're okay with the crop going through a combine and kind of getting having that stalk get beat up a little bit before it gets to them for decortication. So there are some industrial uses for the fiber where food can be, whether it's food as the offtake or fiber as the byproduct, however you want to look at it. But there are some good opportunities. And when we're talking about having to compete in those global commodity markets, which are probably going to be around for quite some time at the level that they're at right now, a dual market is probably a real good opportunity for some growers. Fiber, generally, it's these startups are in Alberta. There's a couple of good companies out there that sound like they got some really good business models. And for growers that are not too far from a fiber processor, I think you can look at playing in both the food and the fiber markets. The thing I would caution, though, is for any grower that's looking at doing this, make sure you know what your buyers need. So on the food side, we still need a good quality product. One that's harvested gently, it's handled gently, and there's all these things that go into making a good food product. If you can manage that and what the fiber buyer needs at the same time, and there's no conflict in quality in one versus the other, then absolutely there's fantastic markets that might be available and good opportunities. And I think that's where hemp has some real bright spots as far as being able to compete globally on those high commodity markets. I think there's some fiber processors in the room here today. I don't know if you want to comment on the capability of doing those dual markets.
It's Dan Madlung here from Biocomposites Group. Yeah, I mean, the whole Alberta industry was started based on food first, and I know our position is that we need to learn how to use the fibers that are currently produced and then grow from there. And Aaron is doing fiber only, which is just fine. So I mean, we continue to grow and need more acres, and to this point, we've generally used the stockpiles that have been around, and we'll continue to do some of that and buy new stuff. But we're growing pretty substantially, and we'll need that fiber. And so, I mean, for us, it's kind of, I haven't got really interactive with a lot of farmers because we hope not to be in decortication world, but we are. So and I'm seeing more decorticators coming on. So, I mean, I think on the fiber side, we've kind of gone we're going through a transition also where we're utilizing the stockpiles, and the capacity is growing pretty quickly. And I think that's gonna, come to roost here where, there's gonna be a big demand for that fiber side. And a lot of that's gonna come from the seed side. And for me, it's kind of, I'm listening really closely to what you're saying, Clarence, and saying to myself, okay, well, what does this mean for acreages? And, who's, some seed producers are just tilling in their fiber. And so, I mean, there's opportunities there. And, we're in the market now, and we're pretty stable. And I think you're going to see more of that stability come in shortly with some of the other companies. And so that produces more stability than we've ever had, I think, in the industry before. So I'm on the dual crop side. Is not the best fiber, but it's good enough for what we do right now. And we will grow to, as the farmers grow, and to utilize better fiber. But I think utilizing what we have now is going to be important, and is, and that demand for fiber is increasing really quickly for us, but also for a few other people that are coming on board. So I don't know if that helps, but I'm hoping that, the acreages start coming up, because as the stockpiles decrease, there's no buffer left. And so we're going to run out of that buffer fairly soon, I think.
Yeah. Where do you think the quality is with the stockpiles, Dan? Is it, you suggested that maybe quality isn't great, but it's pretty good. Is that because it's older fiber? Does that make a difference, or where do you see it trending?
Well, honestly, for us is, the biggest issue we have is we don't deal with moisture very well. So I don't know about other decorticators, that are into production, which there aren't many. But if the bale is wet, above that 18% level, then we get into trouble. And it doesn't have to be the whole bale. I mean, it could just be parts of the bale. So we can still run it, but we try and separate that and throw it away. So what we're finding is we're using old stockpiles, and take off the top bale, and check the bottom bale real closely. But the middle tiers we're running that with a lot of success right now. Okay.
And this is probably where genetics or the demand for different genetics may need to alter, because where Jeff said we don't want to burn down combines, and getting away from those tall European varieties that were initially here in North America. We've gone to the other extreme, and trying to get them as short as possible and try to produce that grain yield. We may just see things come to a happy medium where it can be slightly taller, but still manageable on the farm, and get your good grain yield and give you that dual market opportunity. So I do think that there's some excitement here, and if you can get a couple $100 an acre more for your production because you are finding a secondary market, I think it sits very well with hemp overall. So I do see some good opportunities here. And again, if you can manage the quality on both sides, food generally has some pretty high standards. And if you can manage that and balance it with what the quality needs of the fiber buyer are, I think you have a good winner here.
Yeah, and the genetic side is important. I mean, if you're after that fiber market, the Finola is not giving us good recoveries. And Aaron talked to that last time. But in saying that, a lot of decorticators are, a good chunk of their business model is based on the herd production, which is the majority of the weight of the plant, and there's seems to be a pretty strong market for that. And so, I mean, there is a way here, but if you're going even X59 and those kind, not the exotics or anything, or is quite a bit better than canola in our regard. So those, if we can, get you the seed that you need, and, in our case, we're not looking for perfect fiber, but, the better off it is, the more we can afford to pay, and that we can grow the industry that way.
Yep.
So that's, I see, probably a switch from canola to something else, and hopefully that works for you, and that does the fiber side. And, for the farmers listening, I mean, I just think if you, pay attention to what Aaron's saying, and, what Inca's saying, and a couple others on the industry, the demand for fiber is going to be pretty substantial and growing quickly. So when I say fiber, I mean straw. So that it'll take them a while to build up the markets for the fiber side, but there'll be probably a stockpiling of straw for the next couple of years in order to accommodate those big investments.
Okay. No, good insight, Dan. Appreciate that. And yeah, I think shifting varieties is going to be helpful for taking advantage of these markets specifically. So excellent discussion. Thank you.
Jeff, I think you had your hand up first. You got a question?
Yeah, just I'm not sure how long your timing is here, so it could be a statement slash question. But with that regard, I think we're seeing the advancements in machinery, like in headers, also Clarence, that are going to help out that harvesting method and the dual purpose aspect. But for those that are I'm just curious for those that are more involved with fibers, is how stable, I guess, is our herd market, which seems to be driving the majority of the market. My concern is that it could possibly lead us down the same road as CBD. Just it seems to be an inflated price for herd, just to meet demand. But I could be completely off base, and I don't know if we have time for that as a discussion, Clarence. But that was just a question I had.
Well, how are we doing on time here, Russ? I've got just before noon here, my time.
Well, I don't think we have a deadline really. I mean, we kind of booked these for an hour, but if people want to stay and keep talking, I think we'd encourage that. Having said that, if there's some other key points you wanted to make specifically, and I don't know, you've kind of gone through most of the agenda here, so
yeah,
but I don't want you to.
Yeah, I did want to touch, Russ, on the USDA and what we saw in their 21 crop report that came out just a few weeks ago.
Why don't we do that then, and just make sure we cover that off for people that are interested in that, and then if people need to leave, they can, and if they want to stay and chat some more, then we're open to do that.
Okay, very good.
It's booked for another half an hour, so we're good if people want to stay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Yep, we'll take the cues from the group around the table here. So, but let's get back to that dual market in a second. So if there's anybody that's under a bit of a time deadline but wanted to see the USDA numbers, I'll show those right now. Then we can circle back and talk about dual market opportunities. Yeah, it was just a few weeks ago, the USDA put out their report on their 2021 crop production year. So I've got a year-over-year comparison. So in 2020, they planted 70,000 acres. In 21, that dropped considerably. What I found really intriguing was the difference between their planted acres versus harvested acres. Now, I don't know what happened in between there, if they just didn't have the wherewithal to bring that crop off the field, if there was hot crops that got destroyed, or something terminated that crop before it actually got to harvest. But there's still a lot of unharvested crop that's out there, and in 21, the 33,000 acres harvested. It's I think there's a lot that can be discovered here on why is that difference so big. That one caught me by surprise. Didn't realize it was that different, and the number of harvested acres weren't really a whole lot different than the year before. Now, if you go back even further, 2019, and I think it was the Farm Bill that was introduced in 2018, and that started that whole CBD craze. Now, that 70,000 acres from 2020, that was down significantly, and don't know if there's anybody around the table here that knows the number offhand what was planted in 2019, but it was big acres, and it was all geared towards CBD. And yeah, our our estimates is that probably 95% or more was towards the flower part of harvest and very little else. So the numbers have corrected themselves, and primarily because of the change in the CBD or the extraction market. I'll show you what, so if you drill down into those harvested acres, and now these are going to add up more than the total of 33,000 acres of harvested, and that's probably because of multiple uses here. But in the business that I'm in on the grain production, it's kind of interesting to see that, you know, there's only, I'll say only 8,000 acres that were dedicated towards grain production. So still fairly small. The floral part of it, so for extraction, just under 16,000 acres were collected for extraction. So pretty big numbers still pursuing that floral market. Now I'm no expert on this, so you know, this will be my opinion only. But you know, I really think that, you know, call it the horticultural type or the orchard style production. That method of growing hemp for CBD, I think there's enough production capacity there to fill the marketplace that's available for that right now. And you know, the extraction part of the market, it's subject to all kinds of regulations that are unclear depending on the country, depending on the state. If you're in the U.S., you know, it's still not a natural health product. So I really do think that the orchard style is really going to fill that entire capacity. I don't know what the ability is to collect flower from broadacre here, but I think things really need to change on the regulatory side to allow that to be a big broadacre purpose for hemp. So, you know, I do think the food is going to continue to be strong. The fiber part is coming on really well. In the U.S., they're starting to focus a little more on grain. It's 20%. It used to be well less than 5%. The fiber portion, you know, about almost a third of their production on fiber. And I think that's following some of the same trends that we see here. For seed production, again, pretty small, which isn't a surprise. You know, relative acres for pedigreed seed production are usually quite a bit smaller than other purposes. So I thought this was pretty interesting as well. So the U.S. is starting to diversify a little bit. And then this is my last slide on the U.S. production. But you know, you take a look at you know, what states are contributing to that production, and this is just overall acres. But the 80-20 rule, I cut it off at Wyoming, which collectively is you know, 80% of the production. But you know, Montana, Colorado, Minnesota, California, some of those states, you know, California, for example, largely focused on extraction. Colorado, for the most part, on extraction. Montana more so for grain. Minnesota, you know, building up a decent grain market. But you know, and the other markets are dropping. The numbers by state drops off pretty quick after that. So I thought this was pretty interesting as well, is that we're seeing a few states focus on producing hemp, and you know, beyond this top 12, 15 list of states, it drops off really, really quickly. Okay. I'm gonna stop sharing there. And
just to maybe follow up, then, does anybody have any questions or comments about the U.S. Production or the trends down there? And I think you've hit the nail on the head, Clarence, from my perspective as well. But I'm just wondering if anybody's got any further insight before we kind of retrace.
No, yes, it's Jeff here again, Russ and Clarence. And yeah, I just got back from NOCO, and which has predominantly been a 99.9% CBD focused event. And many of the questions were with regards to grain and fiber. It's just a matter of the processing that kind of needs to get cut up. So I think you're dead on there, seeing a shift there. And I think those numbers will increase on the grain and fiber in the not so distant future as processing picks up. Thanks.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to take the U.S. nearly as long to get up to speed on hemp for food production. I think the resources are there to be able to do that. And I think just looking to the north and seeing what our country has done as far as building that market, you know, I really do think that the U.S. will come on fairly strong on hemp for food. I don't see that as a big negative, though. You know, rising water is going to float all boats, and our Canadian industry is fairly well established in some of those food markets. And as we get, more awareness of hemp for food, more innovations on hemp as a food ingredient, I really do think that it shows fairly well for the Canadian industry as well. There's a lot of consumer market share to reach yet.
I think you're right. And the one big factor that I look at when I, look at labeling and, packaging and that sort of thing is how much is the contents is soy. It's so prevalent in so many foods, and you could easily see that replaced with hemp, and it would be a much better product, from a food quality standpoint. And so the opportunity is there. It's just a question of how do you, do the David and Goliath thing with hemp versus soy. But people will start to see some value in that. So it's going to take some time.
Okay. Now that I stopped sharing my screen, I can see the hands up. Daryl, I'll get to you in just a second. But yeah, Russ, just to build off your point, plant-based proteins, that's a massive trend right now, and hemp fits very well into that. We're an omega-3, 6, and 9 crop, and the Pacific salmon fishery, they're starting to cut back on their production. But from a healthy food perspective, it's the omegas in salmon that's important to consumers, and we have that in a plant-based form. So I think for some innovative companies, there's good ways to get into those healthy food markets that we just haven't even tapped into yet. So I really do see a long-term benefit here. Daryl, you had your hand up. Is there a comment that you wanted to make?
Yeah, but this is more of a back on when you're talking about, or Dan was talking about dual purpose varieties, and so do you have anything more to say to that, Clarence, or should I address? I just wanted to talk about the plant breeding part of it. Okay.
We can get into the fiber side of it, but yeah, go ahead, touch on the breeding part, Daryl.
Well, I'm not everybody would have got this letter from Health Canada last week, but there was a letter that came out from Health Canada saying that the plant breeders for hemp have been, I guess there's some question about whether or not some of those varieties that they're testing, there's more on a cannabis side of things. And I know 2018, when that law passed, they threw hemp and cannabis all together, and I'm sure there's people that are true cannabis breeders that are now with the hemp. And Dan, it's really, really, really concerning to the hemp plant breeders, the true hemp plant breeders. Yeah, some of the varieties that they're trying might be on the edge of the 0.3% THC, and without testing and trialing and doing all that outside in basically the way it has been is basically without fences and cameras and all the rest of that, as treating it as an actual hemp. If Health Canada were to all of a sudden say, if you want to be a plant breeder, apply for a cannabis license rather than a hemp license, that's gonna really throw, oh boy, some big wrenches into the cogs for sure. Basically, some of the plant breeders that I've talked to, the hemp plant breeders that I've talked to, just said, well, we won't be breeding for hemp anymore. They're just going to quit. So I think it's something that our industry should be aware of. That's why I'm mentioning it here. I think as individuals, and I think probably as far as Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance, we probably have to be very careful in how we trade, so that they all of a sudden just say, throw their hands up and do this. But it's something that we should be aware of, and how we go about approaching Health Canada on this matter for the plant breeding and for the good of the industry, really. So as far as there is some really good dual purposes, as Jeff was alluding to, coming down the pike, as far as being very conscientious of having a really good fiber, herd, and grain variety with some very, very promising looking yields in all three. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Daryl. Yeah, regulatory is going to be one of those things that sits over top of the whole industry. That we got a couple of CHTA members that are here right now, and we've got to continue to, again, it goes back to de-risking this crop for growers and making it, more amenable for just general agricultural production. And as an industry, I think we have a good vision on where we want to go through our CHTA, and we just got to continue to work with the regulators and make them see this as a food crop, a fiber crop, one that fits a couple of good markets for our growers, and continue to have it as a standard part of their rotations.
Yeah, just a little further, I guess when I was watching the highlights there last night, I kind of thought Chris Rock maybe could have been Health Canada, but we don't want to be a Will Smith.
Okay. Is there more we need to touch on the dual market, the grain and fiber? We kind of got away from that to cover some of the USDA. Any additional questions or comments on that?
Peter Dushop here from Forever Green and hempcutter.com. Just, I guess, to relate to Dan's points there, I'd be kind of curious to know, we're more fiber centric, but from the seed grower side, what sort of tonnage are you guys seeing? Because for us, it's always been basically a volume and quality thing. I suppose there's always the residual that you can use, and Dan seems to find a use for it, which is good. But I don't know if everybody can. So I'd be kind of curious to hear what sort of tonnage you guys are talking, because I'm not sure if you're going to get an extra $100 or $200.
Okay, volume per acre, you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we like to talk about, and this is in non-irrigated production, conventional. We like to talk about the aim for 1,000 pounds clean per acre or more. So translate that to the contract price we have of 96 cents. You're talking about $960. Now, how much fiber do you get? Well, that's going to depend, I think, largely on the variety that you're growing. And finola is one of those that has driven our food production in a pretty big way. Now, it's short and it's got a thin stem, so the volumes of stalk and straw just aren't there with finola. So I'll be the first to admit that. And you probably want to look at a taller variety if you're looking at markets in that end. Irrigation has a big benefit on hemp. If you can get the water to it and the timing of that water, you can pretty much double your yield. So you're aiming at 2,000 pounds per acre clean. So give you an idea on what we're seeing for grain yields. Fiber, what do you get on stalks depending on variety?
Sorry, are you asking me that question?
In general, yeah. What sort of yields do you see?
Yeah, we're sort of targeting like 3.5 ton an acre. And on the seed residual side, or for the growers that grow for seed that have biomass or stock residual, it would seem to me it's around 0.5 ton an acre. Does that sound about accurate?
Pretty, and I'll refer to the fiber buyers here if that sounds about right. We don't get involved in the fiber at all as a company.
Just data from trials in the past, Peter. I think you're pretty close there. Again, dependent on latitude and moisture and variety. It probably ranges from 0.5 to 1.5 tons in my experience. So.
Okay, a little lower than what I would have expected then. Okay. Anybody else see anything different to that? And how much does it vary by variety? Like what sort of things? Like finola is a big part of our acres, but we don't sell that straw, and I don't know a whole lot of buyers that are picking up finola. What are you seeing with other varieties?
Sorry, again, I'm not really involved in the seed space. We're typically growing Anka, seems to be our sort of favorite for the moment. And that's worked out well for us. I'm not sure what guys are using on the seed side that would be ending up in the fiber world.
I think, Clarence, I think the national variety trials kind of tries to address that to a certain degree as a dual purpose. And so it's a good place for either buyers or producers to go to get a general idea. So, but yeah, I'd be challenged, I think, to try to go any more than 2 ton per acre. I mean, there's the thought that's there, but I think once with mechanization and everything else, losses, I think it's just best to go down that route. So,
okay. And at some point, you're going to get a variety that's too tall, and it's not going to be conducive for harvest, and we'll get back to that original problem of trying to maintain the combines. There's probably is a diminishing return on the height if you're trying to get a dual variety too.
Daryl, you got your hand still up. Do you have another question, or you just didn't take it down?
I didn't take it down, Russ. Thank you.
Okay. Clarence, I'd like to ask you one maybe final wrap-up question here, and it has to do with, we're talking about adding value per acre for farmers to kind of augment that seed side, and we're talking about dual crop. Another potential area of revenue is carbon capture and the value of carbon sequestration, and how we might be able to get that back into the farmers' pockets. So in terms of, we had a sustainability topic on the agenda here, and I'd like to kind of delve into that just a wee bit. The sequestration of carbon from a fiber standpoint is kind of obvious. It's there if you use it to build something, and if you make a brick, or you make a dimensional piece of wood or something like that, you sequester that carbon. But what about on the food side? Is there an opportunity for carbon capture and a carbon value that might track back to the farmer from the food side of things? I don't it's a little bit more elusive, so I wondered what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, and the mechanism of getting that those dollars back to the pockets of the people who are capturing that carbon, that I'm still a little fuzzy on. I think that's starting to develop in the ag world, but I don't think those avenues are really well known yet, at least not to me. And I'll share with you, Russ, on what we do as a company. So our footprint as a processor isn't all that big, but at the same time, we still buy some carbon offsets from a green energy company that uses those dollars to put towards green projects. So we as a company are spending some money to offset our carbon. In a perfect world, here's what I'd like to see. If we had those avenues defined a little bit better on the activities at the farm that would allow payment to that grower for the carbon offset, and whether that's selling that fiber into a place where it's going to be captured, or very specific things, and it may be more of the regenerative or sustainability methods of farming, whatever those practices are. But if we could shift those green energy carbon offset credits that we do as a company and use that to pay our growers directly on some practices that's offsetting some carbon, I think that would be a perfect circular economy. Don't know how that's going to look yet, but I think that would be awesome if we were able to do that and take what we do as a company and provide those funds to growers directly for producing in a way that's going to be long-term sustainable. Not to say that they're not right now, but to have it rewarded and have those avenues being shown a little more clearly. And I think that would be a fantastic story to take to our consumers, to say that growers get carbon offsets, or whether managing their soil or doing things that's viewed as being sustainable, and we're participating in that circular economy.
Yeah.
I think that'd be an awesome story.
Gotcha. Different take on it. I think that's a neat idea, because Manitoba Harvest has for a long time been an advocate of environmental protection and that sort of thing. So
yeah,
hats off to you guys for that.
Yeah, we are a certified B Corp, and part of that, people, profit, planet, and the carbon offsets that we buy is part of that. But if that can get back to the hands of our growers, I think that would be a win all around.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions from anybody, or areas that we haven't covered? Clarence, that was an awesome job. I really appreciate you taking the time to prepare and to present this. That was really, really excellent.
Okay.
Russ, can I ask one question?
Yeah, for sure.
Just if you want to touch on this, Clarence talked quite a bit too about innovation. How can we accelerate innovation, and who will do that?
Well, one of the things that we as a company are participating in right now is the Protein Industries Canada. And the project that we're participating in a nutshell, there's a couple of plant breeding companies. There's ourselves as a food processor. We've got the Saskatchewan Food Development Center as a subcontractor with us. And what we're trying to look at is plant breeding to combine hemp protein and pea protein into that ideal PDCAS score of 1. And, there's, the ideal protein that can be used for extrusion. So we're looking at meat extenders, meat alternates from a plant-based protein. That's just one example. I think if you look at what's going on with food ingredients, plant protein again is a huge thing. We've got the benefit of the specialty oils. There's a number of different applications, and I think what it takes is just some creativity to say, here's what we've got, here's what it can be applied to. Now, in some cases, we're going to be substituting other ingredients like flax or like soy. I think Russ, you had mentioned, or peas as another example in the protein space. But I think it just takes some dedicated time and focus on how do we take the ingredients that we have when we deconstruct that hemp seed, and where can we put that into the food world? And there's all sorts of examples out there. It's just a matter of taking some time and effort in doing that. I will say, there's another round of diversified field crops funding that's just on its way. It's a 5-year funding for innovations in specialty crops, and hemp is part of the DFCC. And I had the opportunity to review a number of proposals, and it's everything from getting food claims for hemp, like use the oats cholesterol lowering. Well, there's examples I think that we can use for hemp to have specific claims in the industry, which will get better recognition. But just to create more innovation and funding, and part of it comes from government, part of it comes from companies like ours in the industry to recognize new opportunities for food and pursue those. So I don't know if there's one single magic bullet for it, Manny, but it's got a fire on a number of areas.
And it's not just plant-based protein too. You mentioned it's plant-based omega as well. Replacing that seafood omega-3, and so there's a number of different avenues that this can be approached from. It's finding champions to move those things forward, I think.
Yeah. And we shouldn't forget we're a great fiber source as well. That shell that protects the omegas when it's still in the seed form, that's a nutritional fiber. Yeah. And it's a non-gluten fiber, for example. So if there's applications for that too.
Right on. Annalise, you've got a question you want to ask Clarence or somebody else?
Yeah, I think, sorry, it's under my wife's name, but my name's Tyler. I'm just wondering, my wife and I have a new hemp farm out here in just outside Edmonton. It's a small hobby farm that we got a couple cows on, and we're looking to grow some hemp this year, like 1 to 2 acres. I'm just wondering what anyone would recommend and or places I can get some seeds that might make sense for different variety that's out here. We're super new to this, so I'm just trying to learn what's the best, and wouldn't mind just getting some plants in the ground at least to start it off.
Okay, well, the seed genetics people that I see on this list, Daryl McElroy, and Daryl works with me at Manitoba Harvest Fresh Hemp Foods. Jeff Koscheck, I think you're still on. Jeff Koscheck was on here earlier. He's in the seed genetic side of things. So there's a number of sources, and I would say contact the Canadian Hemp Trade Office, and they can relate you to other seed genetics providers as well.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, acre or two. It's going to be difficult to work that into a supply chain. Looking at a food company like ours, we're bringing in B trains of product on a daily basis almost. So it's going to be tough to get that into a supply chain. But I think from getting your feet wet, understanding the industry, understanding how the crop grows, it's a good way to start.
Yeah, we come from the cannabis industry, from about 7 years or so. So we're looking mostly on a smaller scale, knowing that we're mostly looking to get on the, I would call it craft hemp side, either for CBD production or fiber production for our own means. But yeah, no, I totally understand. It's going to be a little tough to get on any kind of commercial scale or anything like that.
Maybe I'll direct you to the Health Canada site, to the list of approved cultivars. Good place to start.
Oh yeah, no, I got that. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, I get it.
Those are
Yeah.
those are the varieties you want to focus on, and they'll tell you which ones are suitable for which application. So stay inside the letter of the law. We'll definitely encourage you to do that.
Oh yeah, my wife's the regulatory director at Aurora, so she knows that well. But I was just curious if anyone in the Edmonton area or anything knew if there's like better varieties that grow here too, or like if there's a good eye line on that. But yeah, I appreciate that information. It's a great spot to start.
Okay, I see a hand up from Maxwell. Got a question?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you. My question is about tracking the data. There's a lot of data to hemp. There's the variety, there's how old it is, it's when it was grown, it's who grew it. After decortication, it's, you know, the result. Was there a lot of fiber from that farmer? Was it more herd? Is it dusty? I would like to know if anybody's using software to track this stuff and if they're happy with it. This data allows us to make better decisions down the road. It allows us to bring up the quality of what we're growing or what's coming through the processor. And at the end of the day, we can control a little better what our end user is getting with good tracking software. So I'd like to know if anybody is using any of this tracking software, if they're happy with it, you know, pros, cons to it. This is a new industry, so I'm sure the computer developer guys, you know, they got to catch up to this as well. I know there's a lot of software out there for CBD and those guys, and they're incredible. But as far as hemp goes, I didn't see much. So I wonder if anybody's using any tracking software to gather data to make their decisions better. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll say this tongue in cheek, but we use a high-tech innovation called Excel. So yeah, there's a tremendous amount of data. What we track is you know, some basic agronomic practices that the growers use, and variety, and we look at what the cleanout is, what the yields are. There's a few things that we track, and it's all in a effort to get some trending so we can learn from that and provide agronomic guidance back to the grower. I do think that there's, you know, that the traceability, we can trace it right from the farmer's bin all the way to the consumer. So we've got that, not in a high-tech fashion, but it's there. But the trending that we look at, it's more so on the agronomic side, from my team's perspective on how do we do better with that crop to make it more efficient for the grower in the long term.
And are you capturing data like how much carbon you've sequestered on that per acre, so you can then pass that down as a lean project? No, unfortunately, that's something that we don't. And the CHTA has just started on a sustainability project, and that is a tremendously huge, detailed project. When you really look at the detail on that end, I don't know if there's any individuals that are on that. Dan, you might be on that committee, but there's a lot of detail to manage there. It's really much bigger when you start scratching below the surface.
And there's less sequestration around farming practices than there is around processing, because you can, you know, there's a direct measurement of what you're sequestering on the processing side. But with farming, there's you know, a history that needs to be developed, and baselines and practices and long-term benefits that demonstrate long-term sequestration. You know, it's harder on farm.
The most obvious sequestration would be if you've got hemp bales coming off the field and you're able to put them away somewhere and not have that product either get burned or tilled back. I mean, even tilled in wouldn't be so bad, but a lot of the time the hemp fiber bales are burned in field, or the crop is burned in field. So you get no sequestration in that case.
Exactly.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Well, we're kind of at a 90-minute point here. We should probably call it a day. And so Manny, if you got any final comments or anything you wanted to say as a wrap up? Yeah, you're on mute, Manny.
Thank you very much, everybody. And thanks, Clarence and Russ. I was thinking we'll resume this round tables in May. If you have any topics you want to discuss, please send it to AHA to us, and we'll continue to add to our list. And that's how we can make this better for everybody to learn. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
All right.
Glad to be with you here. Thanks for the discussion, and look forward to this again.
Thanks, everyone. We'll hopefully see you in April in our conference.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.